magic wand time. I love this pattern. It requires Aran yarn. Off to the stash. Lovely navy blue yarn, right amount, not the right weight. Really lovely tonal blue yarn, right amount, really not the right weight. Magic wand. Ta-da! Perfect weight, beautiful, unique colorway. If you want to learn how I just did this magic trick, follow me into the lounge. I have talked about marls in a lot of my videos and said that someday I would do a video about them. Today is that day. The magic wand says so. So let's start with, what is marling, Nicole? Marling is simply taking two strands of different colored yarn, holding them together, and knitting them as one into a speckled, textured, super interesting new colorway. Before I go any further, you know how everyone and their dog, yeah, not you, Oscar, is pairing mohair or Surrey alpaca with fingering weight to knit those heavier gauge, very fuzzy, soft, halo-y kinds of sweaters. Marling is not that. Well, not really that. That is mostly pairing yarns to change the texture and the weight of the yarn. Marling is more about blending the colors. To really be a marl, there needs to be a contrast of colors where both colors show in the finished yarn, like what I'm wearing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, I'm not saying that you can't change texture and marl colors at the same time, because you absolutely can. You could take a white fingering weight and a black strand of mohair yarn and marl them together and change the texture and change the gauge and create a new color all in one. Knitting is cool that way. Endless possibilities. So, aside from all that eye candy, why would you want to marl? Well, let me give you some really great reasons. The number one reason that I end up marling as often as I do is because I don't have the right weight of yarn in my stash for the project I want to make. To solve that problem, I go to my stash knowing that I don't have the right weight, but ready to hunt for the ingredients to make the right weight yarn in a colorway that I can get really excited about. Case in point, this sweater, which I knit last year, it was a knit along. This is the Blume pullover by Julie Hoover. Julie Hoover and the Knitting Posse were running a knit along, and I wanted to be a part of it, and it was starting really soon, and I did not have time to shop for new yarn. I did not have a sport weight yarn in the right amount in my stash that was going to work for this project. Well, that's not entirely true. That was going to work for me. We'll get to that in a minute. What I did find was I had the right amount of this cotton and alpaca blend Manos del Uruguay yarn called Serena in this oyster color. I could have knit the project in this oyster color, but I probably wouldn't wear it because this isn't a really great color for me all by itself. So I also had in my stash this alpaca and rayon blend lace weight, super fine lace weight. So this was sport weight, which was the yarn that the pattern called for. This lace weight was fine enough. When I blended it with the sport weight, it didn't change the gauge all that much, so I was able to get the gauge of the pattern with this and create this really interesting fabric. Dark yarn, light yarn, cool fabric. I was really excited about it. It turned out beautifully. I wear this a lot. So reason number one for marling is you might actually have the right yarn in your stash, but it's too boring and it needs jazzing up. Voila. Next, marling is fantastic for stash busting because guess what? What do you need when you're holding two strands together? You guessed it, you need twice as much yarn. So if you're trying to use up your stash, you get to use it up twice as fast when you're marling. I've got some great stash busting projects to show you in a little bit. You're going to love them. They are a wow. Before I go any further, I need to show you this. This is Cecelia Campochiaro's Making Marls book. Cecelia Campochiaro is the smartest knitter I know, or at least she is way friggin' up there in the realm of smart knitters that I am aware of. She's unbelievable. This book is like a master's degree in marling and color theory, and I love it. I really need to read this book all the way through and do absolutely everything that's in here. I just love this book so much. One of the first super useful things you will find in this book is this chart that tells you how many strands to hold together of this weight yarn to make this weight yarn. This is the most comprehensive and probably all-time most comprehensive table that I have seen like this. And Cecelia really knows what she's doing. So these are accurate. A little further along in this book, and you come to the most incredible color theory course that you could imagine. I've never seen one put together like this. It was so useful, made by a knitter for knitters with knitting examples. It's just phenomenal. It's really worth it to buy this book just for this section. The ideas and projects in this book, stunning. One of the things that particularly caught my attention was this pattern for these very simple but unbelievably effective gradient, what do you call them? Bangles. I'm not usually one for the knitted jewelry, but this really appeals to me. Here's a closer version of it right here. It only takes 7 yards of each strand for each bangle. So a total, and I think it said it takes 4 strands. So 28 yards of yarn per bangle in 4 different strands. You can blend them all kinds of ways. Unbelievable stash buster right here. And a great small quick gift project, charity knitting, knitting sales, all that kind of stuff. Highly, highly underrated pattern right here. If you are at all interested in marling by the time you watch the rest of this video, get this book. No, I'm not getting any commissions. I just really think this is a phenomenal book and you would enjoy it. Even if you don't ever knit anything from it, it's a fantastic coffee table book. I am going to show you a whole bunch of fabulous projects, but before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about colors and how you put the colors together to do marls. There are really 3 categories of marl combinations that you want to think about. Low contrast, like this. High contrast, like this. In other words, a true dark with a true light. And there's medium contrast, like this, which is these 2 blues together. Each kind of contrast will give you a different aesthetic for your project and create a completely different kind of fabric. Another way to think about mixing colors is using elements from a color wheel, like complementary colors. So red and green are across from each other on the color wheel. They're complementary colors. In Cecilia's book, she has this phenomenal thing that she does called making micro swatches. See this tiny, adorable little wee swatch? How cute is that? It's so wee. This is casting on 6 stitches, knitting, purling. So 4 rows of stockinette and binding off. And then it curls naturally to the knit side, as stockinette is wont to do. And you get this tiny, adorable little micro swatch. Now you can use the micro swatches if you're going to be blending a lot of marls into a single project, like you're going to do a gradient, or you're going to do like a big shawl and be constantly changing colors. You're really busting up your stash and using all those little scrappy bits. You can make yourself little micro swatch samples that you can then move around in a sequence on your hand to decide how you want those colors to go. Super handy, super fast, super cute. Another thing you can do with colors is you can take kind of a crazy multi that you might have that is really just too much, knit all on its own. Pull one of the solid colors out of the multi and pair it together and hold them together and knit them up. I think this combo would be so cute. This is a self-striping yarn. I think I bought this actually to do one of those sweaters that for kids that has a self-striping yarn on the sleeves, and then the body is a solid color, but I really like the idea of pairing these together. I might have to swatch and see what I want to do with this. Commercially marled yarns are going to be different from your own homegrown magically produced marled yarns. So this is a commercial marled yarn. You can see here that the marl is a combination of 1 ply of pink with 1 ply of green twisted together so it looks like, you know, a candy cane stripe. It's very uniform. The marls are going to come out much more uniform in this commercial yarn. Another commercial yarn that you're probably very familiar with, or a lot of you will be anyway, is these spin cycle yarns. They are a little on the spendy side, but they are absolutely gorgeous because not only are they marled, so you can see if I hold this up really closely, the high contrast in that yarn, but they are also 2 gradients blended together. So the colors change as you go through these skeins. They're just spectacular. There's a reason that they cost what they cost. By comparison, your homemade marls, which look like this, skeined up, so there's not a lot of twist here, it's just 2 yarns held together, are going to be a little more organic. You're going to find a lot of inconsistency in the fabric itself, which is totally fine. I actually quite like that it changes up quite a bit because to me, it adds a lot of depth and interest to the fabric. Now, you spinners, if you're a spinner, I just took the 2 strands and wound them together on my Swift. But you could take this and I guess do it maybe, I don't know if a drop spindle would do it. I don't know how it would work. You could spin them together and ply them up so that they looked more like this. I don't know how to do that. If you're a spinner, help us out. Tell everyone down in the comments how that would work if you actually wanted to spin or ply these properly together. We're curious. So you can start with a simple 2-color, like 2 solid color marl, or you can get really fancy and you can start adding gradients. So you can blend a gradient with a solid, you can blend 2 gradients together, you can make your own gradient and blend it with a solid. Let's take a look. Many moons ago, I bought this lace weight cotton yarn, which is Tahiti Fashion by Sharon Meyer. I don't know, I'm butchering that, but anyway, here's the yarn. This is what it looked like. It was on sale and I bought a ton of it. I bought like, I don't know, 6 balls in this and another 6 balls in a gray, black, white, gray gradient. I'm working on a scarf on that one, but it's in the car, and the car is with my handsome man over in Vancouver today, so I can't show it to you. It's my emergency car knitting. It's in the car. This is the before and after bias scarf by Churchmouse. It's pretty cool, hey? And it goes on and on and on, but you can see it has this very long gradient change. And this is really cute. Now, if you've watched my video about patterns I won't knit, you know that, and here's the link to the 5 patterns I won't knit. You'll know that I talked about how I don't really like loose-ended scarves and shawls, but I do wear this one because it looks really good with my white linen shirts and jackets and stuff. It just like pops out and is a great hit of color in the summertime. After I knit this, I had lots of yarn left over, and there was a sweater, a summer sweater that I wanted to knit, and I had some turquoise solid cotton that wasn't quite the right weight for the sweater I wanted to knit. So I took that solid turquoise cotton and I marled it together with this lace weight cotton yarn and knit this Caligraphy Cardi by Norah, which is in one of the Modern Daily Knitting Field Guides. I can't remember which one. Everything I talk about, there will be links in the description box. You just go down below this video. There is a description box. You click more, you'll see everything down there. All the links are there. Anywho, you can see how the gradient happened in the marling on this one. So there are spots where this very yellowy green come through, and then spots where the blues that were very close to the same blended together, and then the yellowy green would come back and the blues would come back again. Anyway, it is gorgeous. It is a color that looks great on me. I say humbly. However, this wasn't my best moment in knitting wise, because this is like a summer weight sweater, at least it's supposed to be. But because of this cotton, and particularly because I marled two cottons together, this is really dense and very heavy, and frankly too warm for a spring summer weight sweater, honestly. So it's too warm for spring summer, and it's too spring summery to wear in the fall and the winter. I've stolen the buttons off it that were on it to use on a different project, so I can't even wear it right now because it has no buttons. And I just can't quite figure out, yeah, it looks great with this, doesn't it? I just can't quite figure out what to do with it. Like, maybe I could just wear it as a jacket over a white t-shirt or something. I don't know. I still think it's kind of too heavy. It's just too heavy. It's too heavy and warm. I don't know what to do. You always have great ideas. Help me out. Give me some great ideas down in the comments, please. I appreciate it very much. So that was a gradient with a solid. This is the product of a gradient with a gradient. And this is a Cecelia Campochiaro design called the Marlogram. It's also in a Modern Daily Knitting Field Guide. I think it's in the one called Sequences, because this is sequence knitting, which is going to be another whole video all on its own. It's fascinating. A whole other Cecelia Campochiaro book that I could dive into and knit from for 6 months without knitting anything else. She's amazing. Did I say that? I think I did. Anyhow, I took this gradient here, this blue to really dark blue, and this gradient here, this purple to white, and held them together. I started with the dark blue center of the blue gradient with the white center of the purple, and knit, 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 and then eventually it started to do this, which was really cool. And then it started to get a little more blue and purpley, and a little more blue and purpley, with little white splotches through it, till I used up the entire skein of both of them. Anyway, pretty cool, hey? And I didn't do anything. I just knit. I just put these two yarns together and knit, and I got this really cool scarf out of it. If you don't happen to have gradients in your stash, you could make your own gradient. You could take a set of mini skeins. We all like to collect sets of mini skeins, don't we? We'll talk more about that in a minute. I have this really cool put up of 6 gradient colors. I just love how they connected these together. Don't you love this? I mean, they are, in fact, mini-ish skeins, but the way they put them together, I just think is the coolest. Anyway, this is a gradient. So I could take this, pair it with a solid that would run cohesively throughout the whole gradient. And just as I run out of a yarn, drop an end, leave enough of an end for weaving in, start the next one, leave the ends. One of the beautiful things about marling is because you've got 2 layers of yarn, it's really easy to weave the ends in when you're finished, because you can easily split the yarns and get in there with the ends and tuck them inside, and they pretty much just disappear into the marl. Very cool. So you can create your own gradients, or even take your scraps and create a gradient. Just pair your gradient with a solid, again, for cohesiveness. You could change out the solid partway through if you want. So many possibilities. Okay, here's the eye candy part. Let's take a look at some of these projects. First, this guy is my favorite and most successful stash busting project of all time. I took at least 20, I think there were even more than 20, different colors of fingering weight yarns from my stash and marled them together into this blanket. This is the Purl Soho Library blanket. I've talked about this before in my garter stitch video. And this is a free pattern, believe it or not. And Purl Soho has some amazing kits for it, but you can dive into your stash and put these combos together yourself. This baby weighs 2.2 pounds, which happens to be exactly 1 kilogram, which is the equivalent of 10 100-gram skeins of fingering weight yarn. 100-gram skeins of fingering weight yarn generally have about 400 to 450 yards each. For instance, this one has 425. So we're looking at over 4,000 yards of yarn in this guy. That's a pretty good stash buster, wouldn't you say? In that same category, more or less, is another marled modular blanket that I did. This one was using some mini skeins that I had that I didn't know what to do with. If you're curious about this, there's a video link up here to my video called How I Accidentally Knit a $300 Baby Blanket, because yes, this is $300 worth of yarn in this. So go watch that video and find out what the heck happened there. However, a beautiful combination of solids and speckles marled together, and then I kind of made my own gradient as I went around on this 10-stitch blanket. This is a 10-stitch blanket by Frankie Brown. In my video, 5 popular patterns that I won't knit, link up here, I talked about patterns that everybody was knitting that I didn't have a lot of interest in for various reasons. This, however, is the Love Note sweater by Tin Can Knits. Everybody has knit this one, including me, and I'm glad I did because I love this sweater. A couple of things about the sweater. It was my first cropped sweater that I ever made. I never thought that I would wear a cropped sweater, but because of the limited amount of yarn I had, the sweater ended up cropped. And it's fantastic. I love it. I wear it over a long white shirt and it looks great. I always get huge compliments from this. This is a very subtle marl. I cannot wear, so like I talked about before, people blending the mohairs and the Surrey alpacas with fingering so that they can knit on a 6mm needle at a 16 stitches to 4 inches gauge, which is what this is. I cannot wear mohair at all. I would shake and shiver and squirm like I had bugs crawling all over me all day. Surrey alpaca, I still have a lot of issues with the little alpaca fibers sometimes, so eventually I will find one that works for me. Haven't gotten there yet. So I don't keep those kinds of yarns in my stash, really. I have a teeny tiny bit of mohair and I use it for craft projects or knitting non-garment type things. So what I did here was a blend of merino and cashmere and nylon was the fingering weight, and in a dark navy, and this royal alpaca, cashmere, and silk blend for the bit of halo. This doesn't have a ton of halo, you can see, right? It's got a little tiny bit of a halo, but not a lot. But I did kind of get the texture that I liked. I absolutely love this blend of fabric And this looks beautiful. Now, even just holding this up against me right now, I can feel the alpaca prickles, and I can feel the alpaca prickles on this, but I tough it out because otherwise this is a really nice fabric. But I am getting a little bit of alpaca prickliness from this. So while you are texture shifting your yarn to do a project like the Love Note, this is one of those examples where you can also color shift your yarn at the same time. This is yet another pattern by Cecelia Campochiaro. This is the striped marled hat. And this is in yet another Modern Daily Knitting Field Guide. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. Oscar will provide it to us right here. This is a great example of using solids to bridge marled sections together. So here we've got the light and dark marled together, so one strand of each, 2 strands of the light, 1 strand each of the light and dark in here, 2 strands of the dark, and 1 strand each of the light and dark at the top. In Cecilia's book, she uses this bridging effect a lot to color shift as she goes through a project, but even just to add more color interest and patterning to what is otherwise a very simple rib and stockinette hat. These are super cute. These can also be found in my 5 patterns I won't knit, 5 popular patterns I won't knit video. So go back and find that link if you're curious. I love this hat so much I knit 3 of them. I'm missing one. I have a feeling it's in the car with the handsome man over on the mainland today. That's where I think it is. So what do you think? Have I convinced you how magnificently magical marls are yet? I thought maybe I did. If you're having a good time so far and you've learned some stuff, please do that something, and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Don't forget to ring the bell. Did you know there's a bell down there, like near the subscribe button? There's this little bell that you can click that will notify you when I have new videos come out, so they don't just come to your home feed or to your subscription feed. You'll actually get notified. Anyway, it's there. If you want to hit the bell, hit the bell. And let me know if you've tried marling before. I always love to hear about your experiences. You're so great at sharing your fantastic tips and about your projects and all that kind of stuff. So let's hear it. Everybody wants to know. And if you're a spinner and you know way more about this than I do, please chime in. Now, what stitch pairs perfectly with marling? Garter stitch! Go check out my video on garter stitch and why you should embrace it with all your heart, because it's a wonderful thing. Oscar says goodbye, and I say goodbye. Keep those needles clicking. We'll see you next week. Bye!